In a world where vampires, demons, homunculus, and other mythical creatures have been hunted down or exploited to the brink of destruction, a place called Itogomi Island exists where a safe haven between the humans and all other mythical creatures has been established. There is peace between all races, but not for long because that's how our anime begins. Kojou Akatsuki was once a normal boy, but now he has somehow transformed into a vampire who gets his bloodlust as soon as he gets horny. Kinda weird to have that perk, but it is what it is. Kojou is not just a regular vampire, however. He is said to be the fourth progenitor, one of the 4 immortal vampires that ruled the world. However, he doesn't seem to care about his status, and not many people know of it either. Kojou just wants to have a simple life in this chaotic world, but soon his whole world is going to turn upside down. After having lunch with his friends, Kojou heads out in broad daylight. Apparently, not even sunlight can do anything to him. He walks swiftly when he realizes that he is being followed by someone. He tries to go into the mall and escape into the crowd, but the person following him gets to him regardless. It's a girl, Yukina, who calls him the 4th progenitor. His cover was blown, but Kojou had a plan. He starts splurting out random Italian words that make no sense to pass as an Italian. But no one, not even you guys, would be fooled by his Japanese accented Italian. Despite this, the lad somehow manages to escape Yukina's clutches and races outside, only to stop when 2 full-grown men start harassing Yukina as she follows him. The men start doing extremely sus things with Yukina without her consent, and this could lead to only one thing: a solid punch from the lady that sends the men flying. Turns out, the men were actually vampires, and they start flexing around their own demonic power by calling in their familiar for help in the middle of the street. Unlucky for those guys, Yukina is a badass who pulls out a literal magic spear from her back and counters their every move. Kojou watches from afar as Yukina's moves go from violent to deadly and jumps in to save the 2 degenerates from being killed. Yukina leaves soon after, but she accidentally drops her purse, which Kojou gathers to find out that she studied in his high school. That's right, guys. Kojou was in high school because without a high school setting, an anime cannot exist. When Kojou takes the purse to his school to return it, he meets up with Yukina again, and this time they have a proper meeting. The girl introduces herself and tells him that she was a sword shaman from the Lion King organization and was sent to the island to observe him and his activities. Kojou is confused as he was just a normal kid, but it seems like his powers as a progenitor have spread across the world, which made him a threat to world peace. She asks him why he was chosen by the last 4th progenitor, Quakey Blood, as her heir, but Kojou cannot seem to remember anything, and whenever he tries, his head hurts like crazy. The whole explanation seems pretty sus to me, but Yukina lets it pass. So, it turns out that the whole world was tied to peace by the treaty between the 3 progenitors who had agreed to maintain friendly relations between the humans and the other races. However, the 4th progenitor was bound by no such law, and had always been a matter of concern for the rest of the world. So, the leaders at the Lion King organization had sent Yukina with a really powerful weapon to kill the 4th progenitor if she thought he was a threat. If I know any anime logic, that is not going to happen. After enrolling herself in Kojou's school as a new transfer student, Yukina takes it one more step further by taking the apartment room right next to Kojou's so that she can keep an eye out for him at all times. The literal zero privacy that Kojou had earlier was also now revoked. Kojou, however, is still not sure about this sus Lion King organization. He thinks, and probably correctly, that Lion King is a movie. So, he goes to check about this with his teacher, Natsuki, who is one of the few humans who knows his secret. Natsuki, who can barely pass as more than 12, is apparently 26, or in simpler terms, a lolly, is an attack mage and an extremely competent teacher. She tells him that the Lion King organization is the natural enemy of the 4th progenitor and was created to destroy him and bring balance, and she warns Kojou to stay away from anyone even remotely related to it. However, Kojou, being the simp that he is already going on shopping sprees with Yukina. That night, as he is heading out to get some fresh air, Yukina barges out from her room. She had come out mid-bath so that she could accompany him as she had to observe his actions at all times. As the 2 go out and start playing on a vending machine, they get caught by Natsuki. But before the underage teacher could see their faces, they escape when an explosion in the middle of the city distracts them. When the duo gets away at a distance, they notice that the explosion was caused by one of the vampire familiars. It was a phoenix in the middle of the town causing havoc. Yukina tells Kojou to stay behind while she goes to investigate the area. There, she was hoping to meet the phoenix and its master. However, she watches in horror as a homunculus familiar eats the whole phoenix and absorbs its power into itself. From the shadows, Rudolph Eustache, a European exorcist, makes his anime villain entrance and introduces himself and his homunculus Astarte. He gives no further details, like a class villain would, and instead goes to battle the shaman. Yukina casts her defense spell and goes into battle herself, and so Rudolph calls for help from his homunculus. Astarte is way too powerful for Yukina to handle, and it is immediately apparent as even with her full defense spell, she cannot perceive the second shot. However, just then, Kojou comes to her rescue. He was no coward and had decided to join the battle. Rudolph recognizes Kojou as the fourth progenitor, but still orders Astarte to strike the man. With a blow of her massive fists, Astarte manages to wound Kojou. The boy starts bleeding after the very first strike he is dealt with, but as soon as blood pours from him, a lightning bolt starts to appear from within his body, and soon everything goes dark. The next day, Kojou and Yukina are in school. Apparently, they were able to save themselves after all, but it turns out that the massive power that Kojou had revealed yesterday had cost the government over 50 million yen to fix and repair. Almost 20,000 houses had lost electricity, and 10,000 of these houses still didn't have their power back. Everyone knew that Kojou couldn't control his power, but they didn't know just how incompetent the boy was. Kojou then reveals that since he had never fed on the blood of a normal human and lived as a vampire, he was not able to control his powers at all, and he intended to be a normal human as long as he could. The issue with the Randolph guy was not over yet though, and to top it off, he is the combat deacon of Lothar-Nagia, who is a hotshot known for disturbing peace among the humans and other races. A serial vampire killer, that's what he was, and him being here in Itogami meant trouble. So, the two decide to get where he was hiding and deal with him before he caused more issues. In order to track down the companies owned in Japan by Lotharingia, Rudolph's home country, Kojou asks help from his friend Asagi, who also has a crush on him. She was a programmer at the Itogami Management Corporation, a government office of the island which kept data on everything. Asagi helps them find the one factory that Lotharingia owned in Japan. The factory is actually a homunculus research factory. Just how uncanny can it get? The factory had been closed for some time now, but the homunculus modification factory inside there still existed. The duo reach there and start scouring the place, only to find that there was not just one, but over 100 homunculus that Rudolph was working on. Here's the reason Kojou is pissed. Apparently, humans are fused with familiars to make homunculus, and these creatures can barely survive more than a few months because they cannot contain the familiars for longer than that. Once again, Rudolph approaches from the shadow with not a care in the world about what he was doing. He claims to have come to the island for gaining some treasure that was buried within, and immediately orders Astarte to attack them with her full force without any further explanations. This time once more, Rudolph and Astarte have the upper hand despite Yukina and Kojou working together, as earlier Rudolph had managed to memorize the spell that Yukina had used. The man had incorporated the spell into his homunculus, making it invincible. Rudolph then steps down and picks up his sword to kill Yukina, when suddenly Kojou steps in between the blow and takes it upon himself. Rudolph shows no mercy and decapitates Kojou right before Yukina's eyes. With the progenitor dead, Rudolph makes a big mistake and leaves Yukina alive as he heads to the Itogami Management Corporation and advances to the core of the island's magical foundations. Soon enough, Kojou wakes up. As I told you guys earlier, he was a vampire who could walk in the sun, which meant that he was basically immortal in a sense. Yukina explains that his blood started to go back into his body and his head attached back, and soon he was alive and she had wasted her tears. But there was no time left for banter, and Kojou calls Asagi once more to find out what exactly was the treasure that Rudolph was talking about. Asagi illegally gets access to the restricted files and realizes that there was something in the magical foundations of the island. Before the duo can leave to pursue Rudolph once more, Yukina offers her blood to Kojou so that he can transform into a true vampire and use his powers. Kojou is reluctant at first, but he has no choice considering the situation they were in. So he hugs Yukina, because for some reason he needs to get horny before he can feed on blood. Then, with one bite, he sucks some of Yukina's blood from her neck. Elsewhere, Rudolph and his homunculus enter the Foundation with explosions happening left and right. They were making a grand villain appearance. The relic, aka treasure, Rudolph was walking about turns out to be a hand of a saint from Rudolph's church. Apparently, this relic was the reason that the island had stability, as it was a sacrifice given to the heretical god, according to Rudolph, who helped the designer build the island. Rudolph wanted to exact revenge by taking the relic with him, which would make the island crumble and fall, killing millions living there. However, our heroes cannot have that, and with the newfound power, actually, the old power that Kojou can now control, the two beat up Rudolph and his homunculus. They don't kill them, however, because heroes are always good for some reason. Kojou uses one of the familiars under his control to beat the villain with a single shot. He even uses his powers to make sure that Astarte would survive by taking the familiar fused with her under his control. Later that day, Yukina is packing her stuff and getting ready to leave when Kojou comes to ask why she was doing so. Apparently, Yukina thinks she had failed her purpose by befriending Kojou instead of observing and perhaps killing him, but soon she gets a package with her broken weapon fixed, which makes her believe that she was meant to stay back a little while longer. Elsewhere in Itogami, Therianthropic sympathizers of the Black Death Emperor faction terrorist organization begin to operate within the city. However, they do not realize that Itogami is filled with people who seem to have a hero complex, as this time Natsumi, the attack mage, comes to thwart their plans. She is revealed to be the Witch of the Void, but we don't know what that means just yet, so let's just ignore it as she beats up the monster and ties him up for the cops to take in the following day. Natsuki also manages to figure out that the terrorists were after a long-lost weapon called the Nalakuvera. Back at their school, students prepare for the upcoming Saikai Academy Ball Sports Tournament, and Asagi is paired with Kojou for the badminton event. As Kojou heads to meet with her at the event, he is attacked by two metal lions. They don't seem to be as tough as they look, and are easily beaten with the help of Yukina. It turns out that the monsters were actually there to deliver an invitation letter to Kojou. Kojou had been invited to the yacht of the newly arrived representative of the first progenitor named Lord Ardeel. To add to the spice, the man had not only invited Kojou, but also asked him to bring a +1. While his first choice would have been Asagi, he cannot let her know of his secret identity, and so is forced to take Yukina with her. At the yacht, Yukina and Kojou are confronted by Ardeel and his bodyguard and assistant Sayaka Kirasaka, who turns out to be an old friend of Yukina from the Lion King Academy. Sayaka is a feminist, and not the good kind. She is the kind of feminist who hates all men, and, in this context, she hates Kojou the most. She seems to have some repressed feelings towards Yukina for sure. If you think she is weird, wait till you hear about Ardeel. Ardeel takes the two inside and reveals that he was in love with the last fourth progenitor, and since Kojou was the new one, he was in love with him too. Now, if that's not sus, I don't know what is. Ardeel then comes to the point and discusses the new threat posed by international terrorist Christoph Gardos and his organization. Gardos was probably coming after Ardeel since he killed their ex-leader and he wanted Kojou to deal with the threat for him. He blackmails them, explaining that, if he was dead, his familiars would destroy the entire island. Having no other choice, Kojou and Yukina visit Natsuki in her office, learn that Astarte is now employed as her maid, and discuss Vappler, terrorism, and the ancient weapon known as Nalakuvera, which the terrorists are after. However, Natsumi thinks that they should not waste their time searching for the weapon, as no one has ever been able to use it, and no one will probably be able to use it ever as well. Still suspicious that perhaps this weapon has a hidden secret, Kojou goes to Asagi and asks her to research the weapon using her influence at the government office and her hacking skills. All of this is watched by Sayaka, who is enraged, believing that Kojou was juggling two girls at once and betraying her friend Yukina. When Kojou is alone on the roof, an enraged Sayaka confronts and assaults Akatsuki atop the school roof. Just as Kojou releases his powers, Asagi comes in and notices all of this unfold before her. Thanks for watching Part 1.